Hello and welcome. Happy New Year. I think we can still say Happy New Year because it's January or whatever that day is that you can't say Happy New Year anymore. It's our first episode of the new year, so we can say it. This is episode 104 of the Be Awesome podcast. And I said a couple months ago that I would not have a podcast in 2023 until I had my first guest on with me, who is a past guest, an awesome friend, a massive inspiration, and someone that I've gone to for the last 4.5 years. And we're going to recap how we've become such awesome friends because people often think that we were like born on the same day in the same hospital and our parents grew up together and all that stuff when they talk about me and my care for Cooks. So without further ado, Mr. David Cooks, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, I tell you what, it's great to be back, and it's definitely not as noisy as the first time.
No, not at all. Not at all. We've got a lot of folks that didn't hear that podcast, so I'm going to give the story and you fill in the blanks. And it was funny because I made the post yesterday. I don't know if you saw it about Concordia University.
Yes, I did.
And after I made that post on LinkedIn, I'm like, Concordia University and Steve Hibbard are how I met David Cooks. You made a post in probably 2017, 2018, talking about your book that you were releasing, From Paralysis to Purpose. And Steve Hibbard, who was at Concordia where you were, had made a comment. And I was like, what a cool title of a book. I'm in. I'm going to order one. And then I connected with you. And we went almost a year, never talking, never anything. And I found myself on a ferry to Nantucket to make a sales call in late October, early November of 2018. And I had your book in my bag and I pulled it out and I started reading it. And literally I put sticky notes or I put folds of paper of nuggets of knowledge I want to come back to. And I was like, I've got to meet this guy at some point. And I saw that you lived in Wisconsin, thinking it's about the size of Rhode Island. And I said, hey, this was a Friday. And I was like, hey, we've never met before. I'm reading your book. I've got sticky notes all over it because I'm just learning so much and got so many great little tidbits here. I'd love to meet you and have you on my podcast. I'm going to be in Madison, Wisconsin, heading to Wisconsin Dells Sunday night. Want to do a podcast? That was how I opened up with you.
And I was like, yes, of course. Of course. I don't know you. And I'll meet you in Madison.
Yeah, I'll meet you in Madison. And I didn't know where you lived. And it turns out you were in Milwaukee. It was 60 some odd miles away. Not a big deal if it wasn't torrential downpours. And if we didn't choose to have the podcast in the noisiest Starbucks known to man. I figured 6:30 at night, Starbucks on a Sunday would be dead quiet. And it was packed.
It was packed. And it was on the opposite end of the campus. It wasn't even near the campus. That's why I picked it. Because I'm like, well, that's close to the highway. He'll be able to hop right on and get up to Wisconsin Dells. And wrong was I.
Yeah. But what was crazy was that's one of the most listened to podcasts. And maybe it's because people are just trying to hear the nuggets of knowledge that you and I were sharing with one another. But it was a great episode. And one of my favorites to date. And since then, I consider you, one of my dear friends, someone that I look to, someone that I look up to, and someone that I count on at times. And I hope you do the same with me on occasion. If you don't yet, someday, hopefully you will.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, it's mutual. And let me just say one quick thing. Like, I was just so honored that somebody would read my book. And I didn't know you. Your title said evangelist at another company and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? This person is taking the time to actually read the book. And you have more Post-it notes than there were pages in the book, probably.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm honored that this guy has taken the time to read my book. And I thought that was worth me saying thanks to you by saying, what the heck? Yeah, I'll meet you. I mean, what did I have to lose?
Yeah.
I had everything to gain, and I have gained a ton since then.
Yeah. And what's interesting was I wanted to do the podcast because I wanted to share the story, the book. And what I realized after meeting you for that hour and your your willingness to come drive out in the pouring rain and spending some extra time with me and having additional discussion outside the book, man, I was just scratching the surface. Like I left, I'm like, I need more cooks. And, I was just scratching the surface. And, I was over the last 4.5 years, it's been amazing. And every time I talk to you, even when we're just talking, when I'm driving to the butcher, I come away feeling good. And, I got to tell you, there's no better day to have this podcast. I want to kick the year off with you because we got to put 22 in the rear view mirror. I think a lot of us, had trials, tribulations, struggles, difficulties, challenges, things we're trying to get past, and you got a couple of them. We'll get into them. But I can tell you, I got to have a podcast when I'm not having the best of days. And we were supposedly, I'm going to argue whether or not it was yesterday or not, but this podcast was supposed to happen yesterday. But I called you last night, a little bit sedated after having Novocaine and pain medicine for a tooth removal, and said, "Hey, can we push this to today?" And you said, "No, man, you're not going to be able to do the pod. You just what you just went through, and it's trauma. Getting your tooth pulled is no joke. When you're a kid, they just fall out. When you're old, there's a lot of root to that. It's like taking out an old tree." But I mean, I'm having a tough day, and I'm just excited to have you on. And I think it's good for us to talk about, the difference between a good day and a bad day is your attitude. And I think you and I have had some experience in that in the last, 12 or so months. So,
Sure.
First, why don't you just get us up to speed? What's going on with Cooks? Where have you been? What's been going on? And then I'll pick on you a little bit.
Yeah. So, well, I'm excited just to be here, and I always talk about every day is a good day, and every day that you get to live and have an opportunity to get something done is pretty good. And we'll talk about 2022, and really since 2019, I've had some kind of a roller coaster of issues and health concerns and different things, but I'm good, and trying to write another book now, and actually trying to write a couple of books. I'm not as disciplined as you are, but I'm trying. So get those.
I've got some of your family that's disciplining me, so we can talk about that too. But yeah, if it was just my book's been on the shelf for 4 years. It was one person in a Panera Bread that got me off the dime, and he's doing a lot of the work for me. So
yeah,
it's not easy.
So I'm here in Wisconsin. I have in the midst of recovering from a broken femur. We'll talk about that scenario, and that has kind of left me on the shelf since September of 2022. But I'm excited about where I am. My health is good, and looking forward to rebounding very strong in the second half of 2023. When I'm able to kind of get back out and do some things in person. The virtual world I'm grateful for the virtual world and the opportunities that it still does provide. But man, I like to shake hands and kiss babies and take pictures. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that.
Yeah. And that's not an easy thing to do for you to get out. I mean, that's for you to look forward to it. I mean, I had experienced it last June with you, and I was in awe, and when we will talk about the story that led up to me seeing you in June and planes, trains, and automobiles. But
yeah, that's right. That's right. I think it wasn't in September we saw each other. Yeah, it was because it was September 8th. I was flying out to Martha's Vineyard.
Perfect. You know the date better than I do. Somebody knows the date better than me for once. That's perfect.
It's like I think it was September. The crazy part is that beginning in June, or actually July, is when I began to start to have some health issues. I didn't realize I was as sick as I was, even in Martha's Vineyard. And so I just know September was such a key month because September 8th was the Martha's Vineyard trip. And then September 21st was the announcement of me being named CEO of an organization. And then September 22nd, I break my femur. And, then we get into November when I'm healthy and lose the CEO job. So that little stretch there had a lot of stuff going on in it. And our time in the car was it was good. And your part of the story is always the funniest to me because I'm like, really? So it was September. I think we saw each other though Um, was it last summer here in Milwaukee at
Yeah.
an event downtown?
Last October. Last October, you did a
That
book signing in
October.
my booth. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that previous October.
Yeah. October of 21.
21. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we've only actually seen each other in person in 4.5 years, less than 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Once in Madison,
Yeah.
once in Milwaukee, and once in Boston.
Yeah. That's
or
it.
in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Wow.
That's crazy.
That must be why we get along so well, because you don't see enough of me.
It's the key to successful marriages.
I was, my parents got divorced in 2007. My dad moved a quarter mile away, and I think they got along the best they ever did. I said, "You guys just need to live in separate houses, then you get along great."
Oh my gosh,
but
funny.
yeah, no, but no, the trip was a trip, because you had texted me and told me you were going to Martha's Vineyard, and then I didn't put it anywhere, and I just randomly called you, and you texted me, and you're like, "Hey, about to get on the plane to go to the vineyard, and let me call you back." And then I waited, and then next thing you know, I got a text that said, "Scrap that, I'm on a bus to a ferry." Now it's 8 o'clock at night. And you're taking a bus from Hyannis to Falmouth, it's 40 minutes, but then you have to get on a ferry to ride to Martha's Vineyard. Anybody that doesn't know, that's a listener. Martha's Vineyard's an island. Then you get on the ferry, you get on to Martha's Vineyard. Then you have to get into a wheelchair accessible van, right?
Yeah, well, actually, in the public transportation, it was a city bus.
Oh, okay.
Because I had no one to pick me up and I had no idea where I was going, so I just got on the bus.
Yeah, to a hotel that you were going to stay in for a couple of days for this event, and you called me and told me, first of all, the Cape Air situation where you bought a plane ticket and they couldn't put you on the plane because it was a small plane, and that nonsense. Anybody want to talk to Cooks about some sort of legality there? They sell someone a plane ticket and then say they won't board you on the tarmac, even though you said you were in a wheelchair, is beyond me. But in any case, when you told me that whole thing, I got to tell you, one thing hit me. The whole saying, "Walk a mile in my shoes."
Mm.
And I never told you this. I never told you this.
No.
So when I was listening to you, I'm pretty resourceful, and I try to adjust accordingly and try to think about, what would I do in that situation, or how would I do it in that situation? And all the things that you did, that you committed yourself to, because you could have just said, "You know what, scrap that. I'm not doing all this." Like there was something that told me not to do this. I'm going to go home and reset. But you pushed through. And then when I talked to you, you told me you were going to do that whole same thing back to the airport. But like it was no big deal, right?
Yeah.
I pump the brakes on 2 planes. I take 2 planes. I pump the brakes. I'm done. That's it.
Look, I think I didn't have time to really think. I was just in react mode, especially on the way out. So you fly out, and for people we haven't talked about, I'm a T6 paraplegic. I'm in a wheelchair, and so when you travel in anything I really do, I always have to plan in advance. There is no spontaneity that I'm allowed anymore, and so I have to make sure the flights are accessible, the rooms are accessible, the transportation is accessible. All of that I have to make sure of before I leave. So to get to Boston, and on the first flight, no problem, and then to be sitting there on the tarmac next to the Cape Air airplane, waiting for the guy to, and I asked him the question. I'm like, "Okay, what seat are you guys going to put me on? It's a small plane, because if you sit me right here, people are going to have to climb over me." And, so I was just asking him that question. And that's when he said, "Oh, we don't put people on planes." And I was like, what did he just say?
Well, where's the person that does?
Yeah, exactly. My question to him was, well, who are you waiting on? Because I thought there was another person coming to help him to lift me into the plane. And so when he said, we don't put people on planes, I, I think I had a moment where I thought I had left my body or something. And because I traveled enough and I've never had that happen.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and the other passengers are lined up here to my left and they're
Yeah.
just standing there. They want to get on the plane. And so I look at them and I look at the guy and I said, well, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I said, my luggage is on this plane. I need to get to have an event I need to get to. Well, I don't know. It's our policy. It's our policy that we don't do that. I said, well, you took my plane ticket. You took my money. Can I get my money back or anything like that? And so I looked at the other passengers because he said, well, if one of these passengers would like to help you,
Yeah.
they can do that to help you get on. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not putting them at that risk. If they fall or something, then we all die.
Yeah.
And I don't get any money out of this. So so I looked at the passengers and I said to them, this is why I'm buying my own plane. I said, you guys have a nice trip.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see. Maybe I'll see some of you on the Vineyard. I don't know
Yeah.
where you're going, but maybe I'll see you. So we get back into the airport or the terminal. And the thing that was so interesting for me, Peach, was I got there an hour and a half early
Mm-hmm.
and gave them all the information, told them what we needed to do, and they did not say one word. They were like,
Yeah.
okay, we're good to go. We'll get you down there and everything. And we could have avoided, a 3 hour of wasted time where we
Mhm.
could have tried to find some transportation to get me down there and do all that instead of it turning into a 9-hour trip from Boston to Martha's Vineyard. We could have knocked that out with a little communication. I still would have been upset that I don't know why they didn't put me on the plane, and they could have said that when I bought the ticket. So so that was the beginning of an unbelievable weekend. But I told those people I wanted to meet the people that I was going to see. I made a commitment to them. And I didn't realize until I got there, this is just what people in wheelchairs sometimes have to do.
Mhm.
You just have to make an adjustment. Everybody else was just like, oh my God, we can't believe you made it. Same thing like you would have been like, you know what? I can head back to Wisconsin. There's a plane right there that can get me back, and
I need some cheese curds. They don't have any of those here. I gotta go home.
I could go home, but I didn't. And to get there, I almost missed the ferry, which is a whole nother scenario. Well, I missed the first one. The first one, I was too late to get on, and there was one more left, and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And so then I get on the bus, so I get off the ferry, and I asked the guy, like, how do we get to my hotel? And he said, well, there's a bus that can get you close. Close.
Yeah. Well, and one thing is Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket are the two islands off Cape Cod. Many of the roads are dirt and gravel. They're not, or cobblestone. It's not
cobblestone. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is not the most wheelchair friendly environment. It's okay. And because I've got good strength in my arms and stuff. So I get on the city bus and I asked the guy, can you get me to point X? And he said, well, I can get you downtown. Our last stop is in that same town. So it's 10 o'clock at night. Everything closes in Martha's Vineyard. They must close at 8 o'clock at night because there was nobody around. I mean, where's everybody at? And restaurants are closed. And so I don't know what I'm doing. I've got my luggage and I'm at a bus stop. I'm a black guy in the middle of the night in Martha's Vineyard. What in the world am I going to do now? And so a few people walked by and they didn't say anything. So I guess they were going wherever they were going.
Yeah.
And there was a post office there behind me. And I remember it all. I know exactly where I was. And so I called the hotel. I said, hey, this is Dave Cooks. I'm staying at your hotel. Here's where I am. Is there any way I can, how do I get to you? And so they said, oh, we'll come and get you. And so they had an SUV, which is not the easiest thing to get in, but they had two very strong young guys from overseas that were working there in the summer. They did a great job picking me up, put me in the SUV, get me to the hotel. only to find out that I can't get in the bathroom in the hotel room. And so I'm like, wait a minute. You said that this is wheelchair accessible? It's on the first floor. Oh, okay. Since when is that wheelchair accessible? The first floor. And so, and the beds were like 38 inches high. So I would have to, they offered me a step stool to get up on the bed. And I said, well, how am I going to use that? How does that work? Help me with that. Help me with that. And they were, oh, sorry. And so that began that evening's charade. So we eventually get into another room, and the guys take the bed apart. They take one of the box springs off and put it up against the wall so that I could actually get on the bed.
Yeah.
So when I get, so I was really grateful for them. And this is what I mean. There are always people who are willing to help you to make it work, and if you're willing to just kind of, have things don't have to be perfect. So they get that all figured out. And so I get in, I get ready for bed, and I get in the bed, and I almost sink to the floor. I'm like, no wonder they had 20 box springs under this thing, the mattress. So now I've got to worry about getting out of the bed. Out of the bed. Like, what is this? And we haven't even started the couple of days of meeting people and having some nice lobster.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of the trip. I did cut the trip short. I came home a day early, but I had a great time. But I tell that story because we often, sometimes things just don't work out the way you think they're going to.
Right.
And you do all the things you're supposed to. You make all the calls, you explain everything, you get confirmation that everything's going to be okay, and then it's not. And you have a choice of how you're going to handle that in that moment. Because my goal was to get to Martha's Vineyard. That was my goal. And that's what I wanted to do. Now, after that, I have some things I'd like to do to try to make that situation better. But in the meantime, that was it. And as I look back at it, it was a lot to do. It was like,
it was a lot. I listened to you. I was going, how is he doing all this? And then, so there were some takeaways. Like I say, the first thing I was thinking about is, I don't know that I could ever do that. And I've seen exercises where they'll put someone in a wheelchair for a day for them to understand, what it takes and how to do it and everything. But I know when I was talking to you throughout that, I was sitting here thinking, how is this guy making jokes about sinking in a mattress or not being able to fit into a bathroom or having to get the one thing that was interesting to me that I guess I was honored and felt really proud and happy. But was one thing that you did, obviously you dealt with it, and I didn't know that is, there has to be some vulnerability for you to trust people to literally pick you up and do things like put you into a vehicle. And like, when I got that honor to do, that was an honor for me. That was like, Cooks really trusts me, other than the fact that I thought I lost a part to his wheelchair.
But I still don't know how you thought you lost a part. And you drove the whole way from Martha's Vineyard up to Boston,
right? Thinking
about that, but you didn't let on what I'd had no clue about that.
No. Don't let them see you sweat. No. So for the listeners and viewers, and if anybody has any questions or wants to chime in anything, please feel free. Just put in the chat. I'm watching all the chat sections. But so basically what happened was I didn't allow Cooks because he was insistent on ferrying the bus to Logan Airport to fly home. And I said, just get the ferry and I'll be there to pick you up and I'll drive you to the airport. To get windshield time with my friend, which at the beginning of this podcast, I said it's only happened a couple times up to this point, was well worth the time and drive. So I drove down to the vineyard. I borrowed my mother's car at 47 years old. I'm borrowing my mom's car because all we have is big trucks. And I did know that the SUV was a problem. So I drive my mom's car down to Woods Hole, and there's Cooks waiting on the side of the sidewalk. And I pull up, and the first thing I go is, well, great. Now where's the wheelchair going to go? Didn't think that one through. And the first thing was to get you in the car and then go through the steps of the 6 pieces that the wheelchair goes into to go into the car. And so with every direction, you gave me a direction. All right, take this handle off, take the right wheel off. Now take the left wheel off. Now take this off. And one of the last things was the cushion that you sit on. And so there were 6 pieces. I knew I put in 5. We started driving. And for those of you that are, it's about 100 miles from Woods Hole to maybe a little bit less to Logan, maybe 80 miles. But it took us about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, stop for gas and all this stuff. And so from the time I got in the car, about a minute after I got in the car, I did a playback. And it's something I do everywhere I go because I'm traveling so much. I always do where did I put it last? Like, where is this? I had this freak out yesterday because my iPad said someone was using my FaceTime, and the last time it pinged was in St. Charles, Missouri last week. And I'm like, did I leave my iPad? Where was the last place I had it? It was a Cook's Pillow moment. So the whole time we're driving to Logan, we had some of the best conversation. I showed you some of the best coffee behind the gas station at Honeydew Donuts at the Bourne Rotary. You know, we did a whole bunch of talking. We had great conversation. And I'm sitting there just internally sweating bullets because we're getting to Logan. And I'm like, how am I going to tell this guy he's gone through hell and back? He's going home without a seat cushion for his wheelchair. And so I'm putting the wheelchair together outside going, when do I tell him? When do I tell him? Do I tell him now? Let me just put another piece on. Maybe he won't be that upset. Maybe he'll be nice to me like he was nice to everybody else the last 3 days that have basically not given him, you know, what he needed until they, you know, they figured out to solve it. We'll problem solve. I'll steal somebody's pillow. I'll do something. And we literally get the wheelchair together. I'm getting ready to say it. And you pull the cushion out from the front seat and you're going, all right, just got to put this in. And I'm go, man, if you knew how much I was freaking out this entire time as to how I was going to tell you your cushion, you're here, but your cushion is in Woods Hole somewhere. I can't believe this. You just looked at me and smiled. And it was like, all right, I'll see you later, man. Thanks. But it was...
I do think that's hilarious because you did not let on at all. And I had the cushion right there in the front with us.
Yep.
But I mean, you were so, and this is what I appreciated about you and people in general that provide help. You know, they want to get it right, and they really are focused and intent on remembering how to get the chair back together. You know, all these things, and they just want to get it right. And that's one thing that I have learned after, you know, I've been in a chair for 4 decades, and that people really do want to help, and they're genuine and they're sincere, and they can be an imperfect ally. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be a perfect ally. Yeah. And once you kind of give them the freedom to get it wrong or to make a mistake or to have to try it again, man, that really makes a big difference for them. And also for me as well, being on the receiving end of their service.
Yeah. So I've only been friends with you and I've known you for 10% of the time that you've been in a wheelchair. Was this a growing mindset and attitude that you had? Or, I mean, was there a point where this stuff would have happened that you would have just gone home or you would have just gotten angry? I mean, were you, because in your book, it seems like, I mean, you were in a school and it's been a while, but I think I remember you were in a school that there was no such thing as ADA compliance. You had to find your way to get to your space, right? Yes. It was a much different time. There was probably less understanding. And it was probably, I think it's still difficult today, like you just shared, but probably it was even more difficult back then. And technology. I mean, your wheelchair is like a transformer. Like, you know, it literally gets down into, it fits in a very small space, and it's, you know, it's got technology behind it. It might seem like a couple of wheels and some metal, but it's got some technology behind it. But reading your book, it seemed like, you know, there was some initial stuff, but it seemed like you pretty much were like, hey, this is what I got. Let's roll with it. And let's get good people around me.
Yeah. Let's roll with it. That's pretty good. No pun intended.
No, and it wasn't. I didn't. That's the painkiller talk.
That's the painkiller talk. No, you know what? I think that part of you know, becoming a wheelchair user, you know, at age 15, and over time, you become a problem solver. because if you wanted to experience things in life, you were going to have to figure out how to make it work. It's not like you just can go and make it work. So that whole determination, I think, became built into just the person I am, because that's how I had to live. That's how I had to get there. And so I'm always looking for a solution, and to me, I mean, I can identify the problems. I mean, that's anyone can do that. But how do we get from the tarmac to Martha's Vineyard? That's the question. What are those steps? And is that something that we can do? And what will be the cost? Not necessarily monetarily, but the cost emotionally, physically, to get that done. And if you can measure that, and that is something you can do, then it goes back to the trademark saying that you love to use, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure. And so you're able
that yet?
Oh yes, that's trademarked. Yes.
Good. Because I do use it. I use it regularly.
I need to get my brother-in-law to get my merchandise together, get me some cups and some shirts to give to people. But not to give. Not did I say to give to people? To sell to people.
No, I was talking to Mark just before this. I was rushing to Target, and I said I gotta. I called him. I talked to him this morning, and I told him about the podcast, and I said I was going on at 1. And I called him at like 12:46. I'm like, hey man, I'm just shooting up to Target. I got to pick up an order, and then I'm gonna have some noodles, and then I'm gonna get on the podcast. He goes, you do realize it's like 14 minutes from now? I go, yeah, I'm gonna have time to burn. Don't worry about that. I got this. We'll see you there. Yeah. So if he's not listening, we're talking about you, Mark. If you are listening, you got to get on the trademark merchandise. Listening to you though, I'm sitting here going, man, if there isn't a great personal program to put together, what you just said, we all can figure out the problems. The problems are obvious. And as a leader, or as I tried to be a leader in business, the biggest thing that I always would tell my teams are, look, you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into challenges. That's what I like to call them, is challenges, because problems sometimes you can't solve. But challenges you should be able to, come to me with those, but also come to me with some solutions. And there's so few people, and unfortunately technology takes a lot of that away from us, for us to be critical problem-solving thinkers, of saying, okay, here's the situation, the scenario. I'm stuck at the airport in a wheelchair that I can't get on a plane, and I got to get to a thing called an island. How else can I get there? And what are the moving pieces that I need to be a part of to get there? You talk about an exercise and figuring things out. There it is, and you do it every day.
Well, and that one was very different because I was alone. Normally, I may travel. If I'm speaking, I may have a videographer, or sometimes my wife would travel with me if we go on vacation. There's someone else there to help me.
Yep.
There was no one. It was just me. And I didn't have any. I was like, oh my God. And that had never happened before, where I was in that kind of a situation. And if, I know this may sound crazy, but I really felt disabled at that moment. Like things were like I'm really in a wheelchair right now. And that really hadn't happened to me quite like that, where I really felt like, wow, this is what it means to be in a wheelchair. This situation right here really sums that up. Now, what do you do? And that was probably, I'm telling you, it was by far, up until the femur, the most challenging thing mentally that I had to deal with in a 24-hour period.
No, and I'll tell you, it's not because of me, but and we're going to get into this because Mark's saying, for real, I'm here baking bread. I knew you were going to start talking about me when I ran upstairs. Guy's quite the cook. I gotta get in on one of his cooking masterpieces. But I think this says, for you to make sure you have a wide net in your network of people that you can trust. And this was just luck that I was on the end, that I could help you. Yep. But I know that if I'm in Milwaukee, anytime I go to Milwaukee, you always tell me, hey, you need anything, I'm here. You want to stop by. I think it's important for people to have people they trust and people that they love and care about, that they would do what's needed so that they're not an island by themselves on that rare occasion. Um, you know, it's one of those interesting things, and it doesn't need to be someone that you grew up with in your neighborhood. It doesn't need to be someone. It can be someone you meet on LinkedIn through a mutual connection that you just get this feeling like this is a good person, and I want to be part of their crew. And that's something that's happened over the 4.5 years. And then what's crazy, and let's talk about Mark, is it expands, right?
Yeah.
It expands. So I'm part of this private group with Jesse Itzler. Jesse Itzler is the founder of Marquis Jet. He's part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. He started, I think, a coconut water company. The guy's worth, over $1 billion, and he happened to marry Sarah Blakely, who was the founder of Spanx, who just sold for probably $3 billion. So they're doing all right, and they've had success professionally. But Jesse also does really well personally. They've had kids late in life, but he always makes the time to find for them. He always has some, words of wisdom and encouragement. And he decided to start this program called the Build Your Life Resume. It's $1,000 a year. I think it's $1,349 a year. And last year at this time, I'm like, man, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But I bet there's some really cool people in there. And I said, and I'm going to have Jesse Itzler's ear on occasion, hopefully, where I could send something to him, and surrounding yourself with great people. And so it was probably April of last year. I've been having some challenges with my dad, who's got advanced dementia, was put in a home 3 years ago now. And just having some challenges. And this guy just puts a post on the feed and Jesse Itzler's Build Your Life Resume private page. It says, just released my book, 10 Days Without Dad, or 10 Days with Dad. I've got it here, because I might give away a copy too. And it talks about his time with his father, who had Alzheimer's, who had passed away. Later to find out it was also his 50th birthday that he released the book. So special day. And so I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, and his name's Mark Resnick. And I sent him a note in the Build Your Life Resume. Hey, Mark, I see that you wrote this book. I'm going to buy a copy of it. I'm dealing with some of these challenges as well. This is April, May of 2022. And I'd like to talk to you about maybe some of the merchandise stuff you have. I need to get some things embroidered. And we went back on email a couple times, and I didn't have that much of a need to spend more money on embroidery. And I got his book and just kind of kept it at bay. And like in July, I'm listening to your podcast, which if you're not listening to From Paralysis to Purpose with David Cook's podcast, put it on your list. He's got some great guests. I was talking about the guy in prison with the coffee bean story. Yeah. Like you and your guests and your stories are memorable. Like you remember it. It's nuggets of knowledge. It's stuff to remember. Welcome, Mark Mosquetto, old friend. It's great to have you. While I continue the story, I just want to hit these the chats as they come on. But you welcome Mark Resnick to your podcast. And I'm sitting here going, wait a second. This can't be the Mark Resnick that I don't know, that I'm trying to know, on my friend David Cook's podcast. And then all of a sudden, I got 10 Days with Dad talking about my book. And you guys are talking back and forth. Not just like he's your guest, but I could tell that you had known him outside of that. And I immediately get done listening to it. And I go, Cooks, call you up and say, Cooks, how do you know Mark Resnick? He said, how do I know Mark Resnick? How do you know Mark Resnick? I said, I don't, but I need to. And I told you the story, and you go, oh, that's my brother-in-law. And I said, time out, wait a minute. We've known each other. We've talked about all sorts of stuff. How is David Cook's brother-in-law with Mark Resnick in Walpole, Massachusetts? How does that work? And
it was the craziest thing I've heard. I'm like, what? I'm like, and I didn't even, in the podcast, I didn't even mention that he's my brother-in-law, because I always am very, protective of people on my podcast, and don't like to, unless they share different things. And so I didn't think anything of it. And then when you said, I was like, you talking about Mark Resnick? I said, I'm like,
Mark Resnick?
And we were like, what's the chances the chances of that happening?
Yeah.
And see, when those things like that happen, I think they are not by mistake. I
No.
think that they are divine appointments that are supposed to happen because you listened to the podcast and had just talked to Mark. I hadn't talked to Mark about you or anything because I didn't know you guys even knew each other.
Yeah. We really didn't. It was 2 emails. It was 2 emails, and I wanted to know more. And then he came on my podcast in August. And we got to talk. But that piece, like, you know, Ed Rossich, who was one of my bosses and dear friend and someone that I consider a mentor and I go to, and it's a saying that a lot of people, I don't remember who coined it, but it's that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself the most with. Right. And what's interesting is if you take the 5 that you spend the time around with and you take those 5 and you look at the 5 that because you're only one of their 5, right? You look at who the other 4 are. Now all of a sudden it gets wider. And it was like, I knew right out of the gate, Mark would have had to do something really screwy for me not to trust him. Right. He would have had to done something really, really goofy. Right. And all he's done is outperformed as a friend and outperformed as a partner with a lot of things that he's doing with me now because of that. And now my net's wider. Right. And that's what you have to do. Like, look away from what's in it for me and the benefit stuff and just look at the people you have around me and then the people those people have around them. It's not just your circle. It's the circles that all can build up and aggregate and grow. And I mean, hey man, you picked right. You got a great brother-in-law and I got a great friend out of it. So, thank you.
I wish I could take credit for picking that right. I picked right my wife.
Well, you picked the right wife that happened to have the right brother, and that gave you the right brother-in-law. That's where I was going with it.
There you go. There you go. So and so that's fantastic. And he does do a lot of cooking and stuff. So I don't know if he still does as much. He used to do a lot of bread making and also some.
That's what he's making right now. He's
making
making
right
bread.
Yeah. And so make sure you're close enough. Get some of that.
Yeah. Well,
that.
Yeah. Mark, I'll be by later to pick up some hats and some bread. No, but we got another chat here. This is from a private LinkedIn user. It says, hello, gents. I grew up with a neighbor that was in a wheelchair and a cousin, Tony, that was born with no hips. I was amazed on how well they got around back in the 70s. The struggle was real. So, the 70s, like that's what was the year that you were 50? Well, not the year, but the time frame. I don't know your age.
It was 79, October of 79. And that was just the beginning of having the ADA conversations. You start to have curb cuts and just those are like the first steps in that type of stuff, but things were nowhere near as good as they are now. And I think perspective, we talk about perspective all the time when you and I chat. If you don't know that, you'll complain about what you have today. And you still need to push the needle forward, but you need to take a look and have some context. It's kind of like with basketball. For people who play the game but don't know the game, it's frustrating. They don't know the history. They don't know how we got to the 3-point shot. All those types of things become pretty important. So, it's we've come a long way. Now it's time to get from the bathroom to the boardroom. That's the next step.
Yeah. Basketball, volleyball, and the YMCA all created in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Anthony Amiano is the man hiding privately. Just came in, said, that was me, Josh. Anthony's coming under an alias. I love it, Anthony. I'm going to see you next month. We'll figure out how to get you on private so we can all say who you are. It's interesting. It's interesting when we look at how fast and how it wasn't that long ago, like ADA, like fire rules.
Yes.
There hasn't been a single death of a person in a fire in a school since like 1954, 1956, since Our Lady of, oh God, drawing a blank, but it was all the teachers and students that were killed in that fire in Chicago. And that's when they said, hey, we need to have, fire exit signs and we need to have emergency ladders. We need to have all that stuff. So when you proactively are doing things, but it's not foolproof. It's not
Right.
but it's come a long way from a short period of time. So, but to go through it even at that length, like you say, it was tough. And like Anthony said, not easy. I mean, it's, as you know, my grandmother passed just after Thanksgiving. And, when you look at people that have gone through, she's born in 1922. Like if you went through the stages and the things and everything that they went through to get there, and we're doing that, right? We're building our history, our legacy, and our impact. And that's kind of cool. But when you look at some of the stuff that people have gone through, you go, man, I couldn't have done that. That's really, you did that? How, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is, man. It really is. So
no, I'm working on some new content for a keynote. I don't know what I'm going to call it. You listen to Macklemore?
No.
Yeah, no, you should.
I guess I should.
I don't listen to him either until recently. Here's the story. I mean, you talk about, divine intervention. You and I mean, you are very religious, and I typically call you during your while you're watching or you're at a Sunday sermon, which is always telling that I'm not highly religious. And that's okay. Like that's, we always talk about how two people you and I have different opinions on a lot of things. But we still smile and get along with it all the time. We have that mutual respect and love for one another. And so, but my grandmother was wildly religious. My mother jokes and says that, she said so many prayers that there's a whole bunch sitting up in the clouds for whenever anybody needs one.
That's right.
And so what had happened was it was 2 days after Thanksgiving, and I was decorating our Christmas tree. We were supposed to be at their house, my mother's house, and grandmother lived next door to me. And we were supposed to be there at 4:00 for a Portuguese festa, a cookout. We were going to cook Portuguese steak on a stick. I went to the butcher early in the day. I got all sorts of Portuguese rolls and bread and linguiça and all this stuff. Dropped it off, got the fire started at 1:30, and I'm up on my Christmas tree at what I didn't know was 4:00 at the time. But I had my police scanner on, and the scanner went off and said, 100-year-old woman breathing. And I'm sitting here going, how many people in our town are 100, and how many of them are breathing? Like, or women rather, or women are breathing. They should all be breathing. But how many are there that are breathing? And so I come down and I go to my phone, and it's 4:01, and my mother had just sent a text that said, I think Lola had a stroke. And what had happened was she was out sweeping her back deck, and I lost you, Cooks. Well, I'll keep telling the story for the listeners. Here he comes. There you are. You're back. You got froze up. So I came down from the tree. I looked at my phone. It was 4:01, 1 minute after we were supposed to be there. And my mother had texted, I think Lola had a stroke. So we called my grandmother. I raced over to the house, and I got there just the paramedics did, and I watched her. She was laying on the back deck. She was sweeping the deck, dressed to the nines, ready to party. And she suffered a brain hemorrhage. And they took her to the hospital, and I waited for a little bit. My mom sent me a text and said, you need to come back you need to come to the hospital right away. And I lost you again, Cooks. This live stuff is tough sometimes. Let's see. If you can hear me speaking, I want to make sure it's not me.
I can see and hear you.
Okay. So maybe it's just me. You could hear all of what I was saying? Okay, cool. So I'll abbreviate the story a little bit. I was told, my mother texted me, told me I had to get to the hospital to say goodbye. And I got in my pickup truck and I'm driving. And because it's just after Thanksgiving, and I'm doing 100 miles down the road, and I get to the first red light, and I just say, what the hell am I doing? Not why am I driving so fast? But why am I listening to Christmas music? I'm going to say goodbye to my grandmother that I've had for 47 years of my life, which I was very, very blessed. I always tell people, I can't complain about having a grandmother for 47 years.
Wow.
You can't do that.
Right.
You have a blessing that most people don't get. But I was like, why the heck am I listening to Christmas music? And I literally hit scan on the radio because Christmas music comes on up here in November. And I hit scan, and all of a sudden it was the line is, they say you die twice. First when they bury you, and second when they stop talking about you. And it's a song by Macklemore. It's called Be Glorious. The album is Gemini, which my grandmother and I both shared the same birthday in June, which makes us Geminis. And so I came home and I talked to Amy, and I said, this song was on. She goes, "Oh yeah, it's Macklemore." Da 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 da. And I listened to it, and so I'm working on content right now for my keynote for 2023. I don't know what I'm gonna call it. I was thought about calling it "Be Glorious," but the impact to make it so people don't stop talking about you, so you never die twice. Because
Wow.
I have so many. I hope I hope you and I live forever here. But if I go first, I hope that you continue to say things about me that are pretty good. And if
Right.
you go first, I'm going to talk about you because I've stole your trademark line and I say it to everybody that'll listen. So, uh, but I give you credit so that you'll always be talked about. But
Yeah.
talking about how even when you think you're ordinary, you can be extraordinary to somebody,
Yeah.
and to be able to carry that legacy for a long time to come. And that's something you're doing. And I think it's pretty cool. And I apologize for anybody that had some freezes there. Mark Mosquito, people with different opinions getting along crazy. Seriously, the world needs more of that, a lot more. Well, we're for hire.
Yeah.
Cooks,
Hey,
Cooks can get back on the road in June, and he and I can go up, and we could actually replay some of our conversations
yeah.
of disagreement. We don't disagree on the butcher, but we agree on we disagree on some other things. But
Yeah.
it's respect, Mark. You know
Sure.
that, David. It's that respect that um, having the comfort to have difficult conversations.
Mhm.
I think it's having the comfort of knowing that there's no ill intent. I would never do or say anything with any malice or intention to be hurtful
Right.
to David. I might say things he doesn't like. I might like
Mhm.
someone politically or religious or whatever that we might not agree to, but that doesn't make me a bad person, and it doesn't make him a bad person, and we know that. And if everybody doesn't have their own opinion, this place is a real boring place to be.
Yeah, I know, right?
Um,
I can only take one of me. I mean, I don't know how my wife does it, but I can only take one of me. So
the world has made multiple comments that thank God my mom only had me, because more than one is a challenge. And I got my 5-year-old Captain Chaos. That is a spitting image, both personally and appearance wise. So we'll see how that flies. But
yeah.
let's get into your next phase of what's going on, because this is crazy. I mean, you get CEO job, and then you get into the injury, which I want to talk about that because I have a bunch of questions on that one.
So I saw you the weekend of September 8th.
Yeah.
And so September 21st, as a press release here, that from an organization that named me as the CEO of a $100 million project. I had really taken the job in July and had been on the board and the chairman of the board, and they asked me to be the CEO. Well, on September 22nd, the day after the release, I'm in Beloit, Wisconsin. I'm doing a walkthrough for a wedding. I'm supposed to officiate the next day for one of my former players when I coached at Concordia. And so I get through the walkthrough, and I go to get into my car, and I go to transfer from my wheelchair into my car, like I always do, like you saw me do, put my legs in and just lift myself over. Well, in the process of doing the lift, my femur breaks. And I think I'm like, oh my God, my leg is broken. And so I'm in between, I'm holding on to the door of the car. I'm not in the car, and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. So I was able to reach down
You're by
into
yourself.
I'm
I
by
never
yeah,
asked you this.
yeah, I'm by myself again. And maybe I should travel with
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, duh. And so I'm able to get to my phone, and
Mhm.
I call the groom, and I'm like, "Hey man, it's Cooks. I need you to come back." They just left to go for the rehearsal dinner. I was going
Mhm.
back home. It's a 45-minute drive. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And he
Mhm.
thought I was joking. And I'm like, "Look, man, I'm not playing around. I think my femur's broken or my hip got disconnected. Something's wrong, and I can't really do anything." So, as God would have it, the wedding planner had just come back because she forgot something. And
Mhm.
she saw me there, and she was like, "Oh my God," she dialed 911. She could tell something was wrong right away. And so I get to the hospital down in Rockford, Illinois, and they admit me right away and do what they do. And the orthopedic came and said, "I'm not touching this
Mhm.
because if I do, it'll probably put you in a septic shock." because I had an infection and I was treating that infection, but it had gotten into the bone apparently. And so I had never been in a situation where the doctor has said, there's nothing we can do for you. I didn't know how to interpret that. I didn't know, does that mean I'm going to stay here and die? Or am I going to go home? What does that mean? I mean,
Go
you
somewhere
start
else that can help you.
you start going through all of these things because they didn't provide a solution. They just said what they weren't going to do. And so I ended up transferring from that hospital. Once I kind of figured out what they were saying was that there's no surgical way to treat this, but you'll be okay. You got to get the infection out of your system, blah, 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 blah. So I stayed there. Oops.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
I stayed there for a week until I told them legally they had to transfer me to another place. And so they did. And I ended up transferring to a hospital here in Milwaukee. And so I spent another couple of weeks there. They got me on all the antibiotics, got a wound vac, did everything we needed to do. And they said, here's the plan. This is a 4 to 6 month process. You need to make sure you keep your leg even with your shoulder when you move and do all that kind of stuff. You got 6 weeks of antibiotics go on. We'll get this wound vac off as soon as possible. As soon as the wound's healed up, then you can start doing your stuff. So that was probably that 3-week period. The first week was probably the toughest because my wife was traveling back and forth from school. We were just trying to figure things out. And I felt like, I'm like, where are all these people that I have connected with? Where are they? I can't get a hold of anybody to come check on me, see how I'm doing, and all of a sudden that lonely depression type thoughts start creeping in. And I was like, well, no, hold up, Cooks. No. You're not going down that route. You got to you're going to figure this out. So thankfully my wife was there almost every day when we got back here. And I really enjoyed the help, the healthcare help that I got, because we had a plan, and we're going to send you home. We're going to have nurses come. We're going to get some physical therapy. Here's a plan. We talked about this earlier. It's easy to identify a problem, but what's the solution? What's the plan? And once they came up with a plan, whether it was going to be successful or not, I didn't care. It gave me something. It gave me boundaries and guidelines so I could know exactly what was going on. So I get home, I get out of the hospital October 14th. And then on November 14th, I get off of all of the IV antibiotics and everything, and the wound vac comes off. So that's like after 6 weeks of all of that. Yeah. And I'm feeling great. We know that the bone still hasn't healed up and all that.
Can I ask one question? Because I know the listeners will probably have a similar question. You've been paralyzed for 40 years.
Yep.
How do you know you have a broken leg? Like it wasn't like this dramatic like fall or anything. You were getting into the car. Like
I was getting in and you heard it snap.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay. You heard. Yeah. It was disgusting. Then I could also tell because that leg became inoperable, so to speak. It would always move. I could get it over. It just was was laying down. And so I'm looking at this thing laying down, and thankfully there was no bones or anything protruding, because I probably would have passed right out. But the sound of the brake, dude, that sound.
Yeah. Oh, I heard it with my tooth last night. It's funny, the timing of this, because they basically, Novocaine paralyzes you have no feeling to anything. So you really couldn't feel a lot of what was happening then. When I heard I was like, whoa, something ain't good in my mouth right now. I don't like it. I can't feel it, but I don't like it.
Well, and see that it was one of the times where not being able to feel much from your waist down was a benefit, if I can say that. And it allowed then because that would have been ridiculous pain, excruciating. And so I couldn't feel it. And so that was okay. And so long story short, I get home, things are going well. While I was in the hospital, I had gotten a call from the chairman of the board from the organization, and saying we want to try to help with some things so that while you're recovering, you don't have to deal with so much minutia. You can take care of high level conversations, that kind of stuff. I said, okay, whatever, that's fine. Then when I saw the email that actually went out, there was only one other employee and then a couple of consultants at this point. And I saw the email, and I was like, this doesn't, it's not sitting real well with me. I don't, something's going on. Well, November 15th, the day after I get all the great news from the doctor, I get a call that they're restructuring the organization, and my position, along with one other position, the other position, had been terminated. And so I was like, wow, my first thought was, man, were they doing this while I was fighting for my life? Were they like restructuring this? And like, no, they can't. They couldn't have done that. But then I just said, well, you know what? I'm grateful to be alive right now. I was fighting infection, could have been septic, could have been out of here. So the fact that there was this big announcement and now I don't have that job anymore for something I really wanted to do, that was going to be my legacy project. I said, you know what? I must have something else to do now.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that anymore. And so that was an interesting time because it was another unexpected change.
Yeah.
I had thought the next 4 or 5 years I'd be working on that project, get the $100 million raised, get the building raised, make a difference in these kids' lives, and then I can just fade, exit stage left. Well, that didn't happen. So I'm good with it though. Restructuring is happening all the time. It's not the first time I've been fired or let go. And the one thing I've learned in these things, Peach, is I don't take it personally. It's not a personal thing. I'm not like thinking they were out to get me or anything like that. As in hindsight, I think it's probably the best decision because I don't think they were quite ready for a CEO and a development director and stuff until they had some other things in place. So, it may come full circle. The health situation is really great. I went to a doctor last week and there's no longer a fracture in the bone. And it's just a matter of it completing the healing process, which will take a couple more months. And then from there, we move forward. So, hopefully I can parlay these experiences, how to deal with disappointment and failure and into something that will encourage people and hopefully get another book or two out of it.
Yeah. Man, your perspective is just, especially right now when you're hearing about, Google laying off 20,000 people or however many, and you got all these tech companies that are letting people go because they, I'll say it, you get into some of these companies and they're led by people that have spreadsheets and have ideas or thoughts and how they believe the business is going to grow. And there's this thing called, if there's one thing that's certain, a lot of uncertainty is going to happen. And so you get into these situations, and I'm not saying it's bad intent or anything else, but I've been fired. I've been fired multiple times. And do I agree with them firing me? No, I should have quit first. That's the reality. I saw something, and I wasn't smart enough to realize that that I was better than I had more than what others had to deserve to get from me. But I was someone that felt like, up until recently, I felt like quitting was quitting. And now I find quitting is finding. And so if you're unhappy, find happy.
Hold up, bro. You can't be dropping them kind of gems. And you don't even. It's your show, but you can't be dropping no gems like that. What did you say? Quitting is finding, you said?
Quitting is finding. And if you're unhappy, find happy. Yeah. No, I tell people that. I've been telling people that for the last year and a half. I'm like, man, why are you here? Because I talk to lots of people that are unhappy with their job. And I talk to lots of people when I'm on stage and I get down. I always have one or two people that tell me how I should be on stage. And I look at them, I say, well, that's great. How many times have you been up on a stage? Well, I haven't. Oh, I'm glad you woke up for this. Because I mean, I'd be lost without you giving me your advice of inexperience on what I should do. and I appreciate that, and I'll listen to anybody,
That's
but
right.
be careful what you listen to. But
Yeah.
if you're unhappy and you wake up and you say, "Oh man, I have to go to this job," go find something else. And
Yeah.
if you get let go and you don't have another place to go, then I suggest strongly that you figure out how to network and how to grow and have an audience of people that want you. I mean, I call Les Trackman, who you know, Les.
Yep.
He was podcast guest and author of Don't F It Up, and has become a dear friend and someone that I honestly believe saved my life.
Yeah.
Because when I got fired in 2020, I called him and I said, "You know what? You're not gonna believe this. I just got fired." And in about a minute's notice, and he's known me for a number of years, so I had street credit with him.
Hmm.
But he said, "Hey, did you see we're hiring an evangelist? We got a role, we got a position that we're opening up." He says, "Why don't you should apply for it?" Now I went through the whole application process. I had to take these brainiac tests that I don't test well on. That somehow I did another good test. I tested well. He's like, "You're not going to believe this. You've tested like third highest person that's ever taken this test." I'm like, "I told you I was smart."
Yeah.
5 years of high school, 5 years of high
5 years
school
of high school.
is gonna get you there. Um, but I was only unemployed for a short period of time, and it allowed my brain to keep going.
Mhm.
It didn't allow me, and I think with you, with what happened with you, you allowed your health and your push for your health to keep you going and not give you that stinking thinking. Which, hey, you just admitted full on. I think you're one of the strongest guys I know. You just admitted full on that you were in a hospital room and you were pretty darn close to, if not in
Oh,
depression, going into depression, and you wouldn't have let yourself stay there. And that's the biggest thing. We all get there. It's how long you stay there.
how long you stay there. Even
Um,
even last week, I was telling someone this morning. Last week was like kind of an up and down week for me, and it was like all of a sudden being at home, not being able to really go anywhere, not being able to get in and out of your car, not seeing people. It all kind of caught up with me last week.
yeah,
I mean, I see my wife when she comes home from work and everything, but
yeah,
this has been since September 22nd
yeah,
that this has gone on. And last week, I was just like, it was like, man, I was having like a couple really tough days.
yeah.
And but then I got the good news from the doctor's office. And that
Mhm.
just kind of, gives it jump starts you for the next run, for the next journey. And but yeah, that's just real talk. I tell people all the time. I mean, I'm not Superman.
Yeah,
Um, I'm a man that's super, but I'm not Superman. You
right.
so it happens, and I am grateful for everything that happens to me that causes me to grow. Even
Mhm,
if I don't like those things, I've learned that I can't be grateful for everything that happens to me, but I
mhm.
can be grateful in everything that happens to me
Yeah,
because I could have been dead. I could have not. Could have. Could have. It could have
yeah.
gone a different. It could
Yeah,
have
I mean,
gone.
dead sucks right out of the gate. That's one you wanna check off the list of
Yeah,
not happening. Yeah, yeah.
you wake up dead. I don't know. It's like what?
Yeah.
So all of these other things will take care of themselves. One thing you talked about, I know you got to run, is
Oh, no,
you
I'm
know
gonna ride this out. I'm good. You just keep
begin
going.
begin to position yourself to be able to do more than one thing. And that's one of the things I learned from being in a wheelchair, where you have to really be, um, you have to be able to make adjustments. You have to
Mhm,
be able to do other things and don't just be one thing. Um, it's important to be a master at something. Don't get me wrong, because
mhm.
masters always find a place. But the fact that I can't speak right now doesn't mean I can't do my podcast or I can't write or I can't do some other things. Um,
Mhm.
you need to position yourself and have more than a hammer in your toolbox. You might need a
Mhm.
wrench, a screwdriver, a couple other things in there so that you can be successful. So I think that also has been key. I mean, Mark checks in on me, you check in on me. There are people that check in on you. That check in is everything.
Mhm.
It's everything. It can be just 5 minutes. It can be a text. It can be an email. That
Yeah.
check in, that check in. So if people are listening and you haven't checked in on somebody for a while,
Yeah.
and they're by themselves, the one thing this past year has taught me, um, or it's made me understand, have a little bit more empathy for people who are in isolation in a
Mhm.
nursing home or some other place, or don't have family to come and see them. I can tell you that's worth everything.
Well, there's self-isolation too. There's people that have all that, and they feel like they're a failure, especially with when we talk about the job loss stuff. I know for a fact, when everything hit me the last time, I can tell you that I could name enough people to say, and I don't keep a list or anything, but I could tell you that 90% of the people that I thought would have called to see how I was doing, I still haven't heard from 2.5 years later.
Yes.
And that's one of those things when the rubber hits the road, who's there when the dust settles and who's going to be there. And if you're not there and you want to be there, don't come up with a reason for. And I've done it. I'm the first one to say it. You got a friend that loses a loved one, you got a friend that loses a job. Oh, well, they got a family, they got this. A lot of those people aren't calling. And if you
No.
just say, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" And that's what happened. Resnick knew that I drove you from Martha's Vineyard, and he
Right.
called me the night that everything. I think the night or the day after, he goes, "Hey, do you hear what happened to Cooks?" And I said, "No, I got no idea." I said, "How the hell does he break his leg? He's in a wheelchair." And I called you, and I'm like, "Dude, you just figured out how to do something that I don't think anybody else has figured out how to do." And you were in the hospital, and and I didn't know you were struggling, and but I think that's important. Mark Resnick just said the check-in spot on, Cooks. That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
David Young, another Josh statement, love it. That must have been my quitting is finding. And Mark Mosquito, layoffs suck, but without experiencing one, I wouldn't be where I am now, which is right where God wants me to be. Hey, Mark, if you're still on, check this thing out. Oh, God, I hope I don't break it while I try to grab it. Mark is a big, space, and I think he's a Star Wars fan. Check that out. That's a Lego Darth Vader. My brother, my younger brother, for Christmas, he said, "Hey, you need a hobby. You need something to help you relax. Your brain's always going. You need something to just calm yourself. You're on the phone. You're on your computer. You got your kids. You got all this stuff. You got to do something, to relax." And he gives me my Christmas present. It was a 900 piece whatever Darth Vader Lego set, and I look at him. I go, "Who the hell's this for? Like, what is this? Like, this is for me?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "It's therapeutic." And I was like, "It's therapeutic?" I got a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old. I step on these things every day, and I have to put theirs together. Now I got to put mine together. And I'm going to tell you something. 47 years old, sitting at my dining room table for 2 nights. No TV, no phone, just an instruction book with 252 instructions, and looking at a whole bunch of pieces, wondering how it's going to look like it. It actually felt pretty darn good. So it sits on my desk. I had no idea Mark was going to be. He says, "I love it." He says, "Peach is a master, checking in on friends. I'm still working on it, Peach. Peach is my role model." "No, Mark, no, thank you, buddy, but I don't think I'm I don't know if I want to be anybody's role model, especially when I've got some good pain meds in me. So, but I appreciate it, man. And we got to get another Bulls game in. Mark and I used to work together years ago, and he became and after we worked together, great friend, and someone that I've had some amazing conversations with. He's also originally from Massachusetts, so on the other side of town, he's up north of me. So, but Mark, I think you're a Northeastern grad, right? If you're still on here, I think Mark went to Northeastern. But if he did, Mark Resnick and Mark Mosquito need to meet, because Mark Resnick put a post on LinkedIn today. I shared it with the Boston University box. He wants to start giving selling boxes in Northeastern again. He's a Northeastern connection. So anyway,
Work it out.
Cooks, we gotta, yeah. Mark Mosquito, Husky Pride. Mark Resnick and Mark Mosquito meet each other. You guys are friends. We just hooked 2 people up that know each other now, and they both share a great first name. So we'll see how that all pans out. But let's finish up, Cooks, with what is 2023. You're working on your books. You're doing some virtuals. When can you start speaking again in person? I think, I got a lot of network of folks that always looking for speakers. When are you going to be able to hit the road?
I think conservatively, I'll say June 1st. It probably be before then, but that way I'll be clear on what my physical state will be and how to get around all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think the second half of this year should be great. I've got a number of virtual talks to give over the next month and a half, which is great to do that as well. Because some people are still virtual. So I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So I think the latter half of this year, this is a year of I think just next level stuff. I know I hear all the talk about the economy and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not participating in that. I expect I expect great things.
I love it. Man, I had this conversation just before we came on with someone because there's a lot of uncertainty in our business. We get paid for our words, and it takes a lot to sell those words, and we sell them for a lot of money in a lot of people's eyes. It's not a lot of money if you saw the effort and what we need to put into it. But I had a friend of mine that was talking to me, and he's worried, and his business has slowed down. And he says, "Well, Peach, what are you doing?" I said, "If I remember correctly, the worst economic time in history, not the COVID, because that was temporary. So that's a different animal. The longest standing length of a recession in history was somewhere around 2007 to 2010. At its absolute worst, it was 89% employment rate. 89% employment rate, because all the news talked about was an 11% unemployment rate. And I can remember in 2009, 2010, I was in Toronto, Ontario with a guy by the name of Joe Klotz that works with Johnson Controls. I went to an office up there to do a talk, and I was driving to the airport, and I got an alert that my flight was delayed by 2 hours. And this is my messed up brain. And I go, all right, I'm just going to drive home. And because I was in a funk, right? I needed alone time. I needed windshield time. So I decided to drive from Toronto at 3:00 in the afternoon to Boston, to Logan Airport, to drop off my rental car that I was supposed to return in Toronto, get in my car that was at Logan Airport, and drive home. For anybody that doesn't know the distance of that, it's roughly 630 miles, over a 2-hour delay. And so I have the picture. I got to find it, but I'm going over the bridge by Niagara Falls, and I'm sitting in bumper to bumper traffic. And I sat there and I said, where the hell are all these people going? Unemployment's at 11%. Where is everybody going? They can't be going to dinner. They can't be going to buying this stuff. And it clicked. And I'm like, yeah, 11% is unemployed, but 89% is gainfully working every day. I need to focus my efforts on the 89%, and I need to let the news take care of the 11%. And when you do that, it's a much different feeling. Is life good for me financially and everything else? No, it's nowhere near where I want it to be. And it's not that I want jets and everything else. And many days I sit here and go, well, where am I getting the money this month? But
I know, right?
If you stay close to that 89%, it will come.
Yep.
If you stick with that 11%, it's just like that. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you spend all your time focusing on that 11% and the investments that you made that you're not going to touch for the next 20 years anyway, and all this other stuff, you're going to end up in that hole. Stay out of it. Yep. Stay out of it. It's not ignoring it. It's there. It's just not there. It's just not there as much as people want you to think it's there. The news controls what you want to think. They want to control the narrative, and don't let them.
That's right.
You control your own narrative. You control who you get to be with, who you get to spend time with, and who can drive that next level of positivity, improvement, performance, everything. That's your choice. And I think I know you're going to do it this year. I know you're going to knock some things out.
Oh yeah,
you're going to. And that's just a give. That's just a given.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I'm going to probably branch off into some college campus speaking as well, and a couple other avenues. So I'm with you. I dictate to my circumstance. It's not the other way around. So I talk to my circumstances all the time and tell them, oh no, I got this.
I gave you the trademark suggestion, so I'm going to give you this suggestion. I love and I think it's got legs, corporate or college or K-12, to build a program on you see the problem, now what?
Mhm.
You see the problem, now what? And to
Yep.
teach people exactly what. See, you have to do it naturally.
Right.
So to teach people how to solve problems would be amazing. How to just be a human again, right?
Yeah.
How to just be there without having, like, I mean, you want to do a crazy problem solving exercise? Take everybody's phones away from them for 20 minutes and ask them questions.
Oh yeah. Right. And when I was a teacher in high school, I would have classes with no electronic devices.
Yep.
And those kids, I mean, they were like a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
Eventually they figured it out.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think sometimes we just gotta, and it's fundamental things that we've gotten away from. And I love
Yeah.
that idea about, well, now what? You mean you got the problem,
Yeah.
now what? You know?
Well, I mean, here's the reality. I do this talk about intelligence and multi-generational workforce because it's the first time in history that there's potentially five generations or more. And I proved it. I was down in Florida last month and I met Clyde, who drives a front-end loader that's 92 years old, working in one of the largest school districts in the state of Florida. 92. 92 is the oldest employee. 18 is the youngest employee out of 450 employees. You got five, possibly six generations at that point.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so when I do these talks, I say, hey, look, millennials are the first generation that were smarter than their parents by the time they were teenagers. My 5-year-old is going to be smarter than me by the time he's 7 because of technology. Because when I was growing up, Gen X, I'll never be smarter than my father because I had to do something called read a dictionary, read an encyclopedia, read
Yep.
newspapers, read books, and I could never catch up to his experience. And that's what gave him his knowledge. Now,
Yep.
knowledge outweighs experience, but experience always wins. Experience always wins.
Always.
And I'm a firm believer of that. So, yeah, no, you got some good stuff. And we actually got Mark Mosqueto's on fire today. He says, we've got to get you both come down and talk to my daughter's school in St. Pete. I love St. Pete. I know the school. I did a campus tour there. That's some empowering stuff. Hey, put a word in. Let's talk to them. We'll have talk. We'll travel.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I spend a lot of time down in Florida speaking to a lot of great people down there. Everybody's migrating down there. Every other license plate's New York or California. They all moved down after COVID and they never went home. So, Mark, we'd love to do that.
We'd love to.
Cooks and I have talked about doing some dynamic duo work together. We just got to get it.
We just got to get it. We got to get it organized.
Get it organized. Yeah.
I got to make sure I can, stay out of harm's way. Good grief.
Oh, man, hey, we just have to find somebody that's got one of those planes we can borrow.
That's it, right?
I told you. Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
right
I told. Well, we'll end with one of these stories. Well, we'll end at one of these stories, but. One of the stories that we started with was when you actually had an issue when you flew to Boston to do a talk. And that was one of our conversation pieces. And I looked at you and I knew you all of an hour. And I'm sure you remember what I said. I said, hey, Cooks, just remember to pick me up in the plane when you got it, right? Just remember to pick me up in the plane when you got it, because you're going to get it, because the world needs to hear your story. And it will make a difference in the world that you'll get rewarded for it greatly. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And I'm behind you 100%. And I can't wait to see next level. I can't wait to be an Eckerd for us to kick off maybe we'll do my modified talk I'm doing with Paul Anastasia. I think I told you about it. Birds of different feathers. Birds of different feathers can still flock together.
Yeah.
We'll put something together. So, hey, listen, I got pickup duty. I got to pick up the big man at school today, and I'm glad you can make time for me today. I think I wowed you. I don't think I wow you all the time, but I think I wowed you. I got a mouthful of blood. I got a busted out face. I took him up taking pain pills.
I was trying to get you to, hey, we can do it tomorrow. We can do it in February. We can take it, whatever. And you're like, oh no, I got it. I said, okay.
Based on the participation and the responses, it sounds like I didn't mumble or drool on myself too bad.
No.
And this was the best one yet. So I look forward to the next best one. Because that's what it is.
Maybe we'll do that one on the private jet.
Boom. That's what I like to hear. Let's work on that.
Because
let's borrow from somebody. I mean, this is there's so many people that have them now on social media. We just somebody should just want to let us borrow it and come along for the ride.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'll tell you what. I put posts on LinkedIn. You probably see where I'll say, Paul Anastasi, the guy that saved my life. So he gets front seat. He gets front seat in big bed always, in first class on the flights. That's what happens when you save someone's life. You always get the good stuff, and you deserve it. He'd get it anyway because he's just an amazing friend, and he's my podcast co-host on my channel. We put some of these trips that we do, and I tell you what, I get anywhere between 3 and 5 cold reach outs by people that I barely know, which that's a little weird sometimes, but I'm complimented by it. But people will say, if there's ever a chance to get some windshield time with you or both of you, I'd love to go. And someone actually last week on my Canada post actually offered to pay for the gas. I was like, yeah, they're like, if I can go to Canada with you guys, I'll pay for the gas. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's a nice, that's 562 miles each way in my big rig. That'll work a little. Yeah.
Just do a background check.
Yeah. Mark Resnick looking out. He says, Airstream for the book tour. I'll make sure it has an automatic lift for Dave. It's always thinking. So
hey, let's get it done.
Hey, listen, if we could do both books at the same time.
Oh my God.
Oh boy, that'd be a book tour for the ages.
Do
you got a title for your book?
No. No, I don't. I have one book will be more of a devotional quote type book, like quotes, and then the other book will deal more with probably perspective, perseverance, and partnerships, and how important they are in solving problems and getting to your purpose, kind of thing. So, but no title just yet. Maybe 52 reasons to live. That'd be a nice for a book.
Yep. Or you could do like a 365 days of appreciation type of thing. But I mean, that's all those things define your purpose, right? So that's what all those things culminate and put together and put your purpose in.
Absolutely. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll just keep writing and telling stories and trying to make a difference, man. At the end of the day. So
you've done it with me, my friend, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on and sticking on here for the world's longest podcast in Be Awesome history, which is amazing because I think we could go for a couple more hours and we got people listening. Best participation yet. So for everybody that participated, thank you for joining us here today and pointing in. And we'll look forward to many episodes this year. We're going to have Cooks back on, I'm sure, at least once or twice. To check in, and I'm glad we were able to get this in January, because if we had to do it in February, I'd have a month lost of podcast episodes. So we're firing it back up now that we've got the Happy New Year with Cooks out of the way and in the books, and for everyone in the world to hear. We're going to work on episode 105, hopefully for next week for you. So Cooks, enjoy the rest of the day. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for always being in my corner, and I think I'm always in yours.
And thank you so much for the opportunity. I never take these things for granted because you didn't have to do it, and you did. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you, and appreciate everybody for listening and watching. And for those that listen and watch after this, thank you. And you are important to us as well. We value and appreciate the 5-star ratings and reviews that you give us on the podcast platforms, the sharing that you do, the following and subscribing. A lot of these channels now are requiring minimum number of followers and subscribers, and 5-star rating and reviews is what helps our performance for visibility and for credibility. So all I ask is that if you like our podcast, if you like our videos, subscribe to YouTube. Please share it with your friends. Share this video with the people that you're connected with. Talk about it. And if you do a 5-star rating and review, please do me a favor. Send me, Josh, at Be Awesome, and that's JOSH at Be Awesome, BEAUSM.com. Tell me you did it. Tell me who you are. It's a 5-star rating review on any podcast platform. We'll send you a free Be Awesome t-shirt, shipping and handling included. And because your time is worth something, and I think it's absolutely worth a free t-shirt. So we're in the top 3% currently with 70 ratings and reviews, 5-star rating reviews. I'd love to get to 100 by March 1st. That's my goal right now, and that'll probably put us in the top 2%. So in the meantime, if you can be anything, be awesome. Have a great day, everybody.